The shuttle descended through clouds that glowed purple and gold in the light of twin suns. Daniel Carter pressed his face close to the small window, watching the alien world grow larger beneath him. He had seen pictures of Valaris Prime, but nothing had prepared him for how beautiful it was. Crystal towers rose from the surface like frozen flames. Rivers of silver liquid wound between forests of trees that seemed to sing as wind moved through their branches. "Stop acting like a tourist," Ambassador Laura Kim said from across the aisle. She was reviewing documents on her tablet, her face tight with stress. "We're here to negotiate peace, not take photographs." Daniel straightened in his seat. "Sorry, ma'am. I've just never seen anything like this. And you probably never will again if these talks go badly." She did not look up from her tablet. "The Valerians are not happy with us. 3 of their warships destroyed, 200 of their soldiers dead. They want someone to pay for that." Daniel knew the history. Everyone on Earth knew it. 6 months ago, a Valarian patrol fleet had entered human space without warning. They claimed they were chasing criminals. The Human Defense Force saw only alien warships approaching their colonies. Shots were fired. Ships exploded. By the time both sides realized the mistake, it was too late. Now humanity needed peace. The Valarian Empire was old and powerful. They controlled hundreds of worlds. Humanity controlled 12. A real war would be a disaster. The shuttle landed on a platform of white stone. Daniel gathered his bags and followed Ambassador Kim down the ramp. The air smelled strange, sweet and sharp at the same time. A group of Valarians waited for them at the bottom. Daniel had studied their species for months, but seeing them in person was different. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. Their eyes were large and completely black, showing no emotion. They moved with a grace that made humans look clumsy. The leader of the group stepped forward. He wore armor of dark metal and carried a long blade at his side. "I am Commander Kithros," he said. His voice was cold. "I am responsible for your safety within the palace. You will follow my instructions at all times." Ambassador Kim bowed slightly. "We are grateful for your hospitality." "This is not hospitality," Kithros replied. "This is duty. The Queen has agreed to hear your words. That is all." "That is all." He turned and walked toward the palace without waiting to see if they followed. The palace was the largest building Daniel had ever seen. It rose from the ground like a mountain made of glass and light. Thousands of windows caught the sunlight and threw rainbows across the stone courtyards. Guards stood at every door, their faces empty of expression. Inside, the halls were wide enough for ships to fly through. Statues of ancient Valarian rulers lined the walls, their stone eyes watching every step the humans took. Daniel felt very small, very young, and very far from home. They were led to a large chamber where other Valarian officials waited. At the center of the room sat a throne of black crystal, and on that throne sat Queen Selit Haradat. She was beautiful in the way that a storm is beautiful. Her skin was pale silver, and her eyes were darker than space. She wore robes of deep blue that flowed around her like water. When she looked at the human delegation, Daniel felt like an insect being examined before it was crushed. "So these are the humans," she said. Her voice filled the room without effort. "The species that kills first and asks questions later." Ambassador Kim stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we come in peace. What happened was a tragedy born from misunderstanding. We wish only to find a path forward together. A path forward." The Queen's lips curved in something that was not quite a smile. "My people have walked among the stars for 10,000 years. Your kind discovered fire yesterday. What path could we possibly walk together?" Daniel kept his eyes down, as he had been trained. Junior diplomats did not speak. Junior diplomats did not draw attention. But as he stood there, he noticed movement at the edge of the room. A child was watching them. She was hiding behind a tall pillar, peeking out with curious eyes. She was small for a Valarian, maybe equivalent to a human 7-year-old. Her skin shifted through soft shades of pink and blue, and unlike the adults around her, her face was full of expression. Wonder, curiosity, fear. The princess, Daniel realized. He had read about her in the briefing files. Princess Mirith, the Queen's only child. You will be given quarters in the East Wing, Queen Selithra continued. The negotiations will begin tomorrow. I suggest you use the time to prepare arguments better than the ones you have presented today. Ambassador Kim bowed again. Thank you, Your Majesty. As the guards led them away, Daniel glanced back one more time. The little princess was still watching from behind her pillar. Their eyes met for just a moment. Without thinking, Daniel raised his hand and gave a small, gentle wave. The princess did not wave back. She did not smile. But she did not look away either. Carter. Ambassador Kim's voice was sharp. Keep up. Daniel hurried after his delegation, but his mind stayed on that small face hiding in the shadows. There had been something in her eyes that he recognized. Something that looked a lot like loneliness. That night, Daniel could not sleep. His quarters were large and beautiful, with windows that looked out over gardens filled with glowing flowers. But it all felt cold. The walls were too smooth. The silence was too heavy. He thought about the princess. In all his research, he had learned that Valarian culture did not allow public affection. Touch between royals and others was forbidden. Children were raised by servants, trained from birth to hide their feelings. Emotion was weakness. Love was strategy. What kind of childhood was that? Daniel walked to his window and looked up at the strange stars. Somewhere out there, Earth hung in the darkness. His sister was probably putting her kids to bed right now, reading them stories, kissing their foreheads. He wondered if anyone had ever kissed Princess Mirith goodnight. He wondered if anyone ever would. In the distance, the palace towers gleamed in the moonlight. Somewhere in those cold halls, a little girl was sleeping alone in a room too big for her. In a world that had forgotten what it meant to be loved, Daniel did not know it yet. But that small wave would change everything. The negotiations did not go well. Daniel sat in the corner of the grand meeting hall, taking notes on his tablet, while Ambassador Kim and Queen Selithra argued across a table of polished stone. The Queen wanted humanity to pay for every Valarian life lost. She wanted territory. She wanted human ships banned from 3 entire sectors of space. These terms would cripple our expansion for 50 years, Ambassador Kim said. Her voice calm but strained. Then, perhaps you should have thought before you fired on our vessels, the Queen replied. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Every word carried the weight of an empire. Daniel stopped listening after a while. He had heard the same arguments for 2 days now. Instead, he found his eyes wandering to the edges of the room. She was there again. Princess Mirith. She stood in the doorway, half hidden by a curtain. Her large, dark eyes watched the humans with obvious fascination. When she noticed Daniel looking at her, she quickly ducked behind the fabric. This had been happening since they arrived. Everywhere the human delegation went, the princess seemed to appear. In the hallways, in the gardens, always watching from a distance. Always alone. Daniel had asked one of the palace servants about her. The old Valarian had looked uncomfortable. The princess is well cared for, he had said carefully. She has the finest teachers, the most beautiful rooms, everything a child could want. But does she have friends? Daniel had asked. Does she play with other children? The servant had not answered. He had simply bowed and walked away. That afternoon, Daniel was walking through the palace gardens when he saw her again. The princess was sitting by a fountain, drawing patterns in the water with her finger. She looked so small against the massive crystal sculptures and ancient trees. He watched her for a moment from behind a hedge. She seemed lost in her own world, humming a soft melody that did not sound like any music he had heard on Earth. Then she stood up too quickly and tripped on the edge of her long dress. She fell hard onto the stone path. Daniel started to move toward her, but two guards were already there. They stood over her, waiting. They did not offer their hands. They did not speak words of comfort. They simply watched as the little girl pushed herself up from the ground, her knee bleeding. Her eyes wet with tears she was not allowed to shed. She brushed off her dress and walked away without looking at anyone. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. On Earth, if a child fell, adults ran to help. They picked the child up. They kissed the wound. They said it would be okay. Here, a princess bled alone while guards watched like statues. That night, he found a small flower outside his door. It was blue with golden edges, unlike anything that grew on Earth. There was no note, no explanation. But Daniel knew who had left it. He thought for a long time about what to do. Ambassador Kim had warned him repeatedly not to get distracted. The negotiations were at a critical point. Any wrong move could destroy everything. But he could not stop thinking about that little face, that loneliness in her eyes. He found a piece of paper in his bag. Back home, his niece had taught him how to make origami cranes. She said they brought good luck. Daniel folded the paper carefully, making each crease perfect. When he was done, he had a small white bird with spread wings. He placed it outside his door before he went to sleep. In the morning, it was gone. The next day, there was another gift. A small smooth stone that sparkled with inner light. Daniel found it resting on his windowsill. He made another crane. This time he used a page from his notebook, covered in writing. He wondered if she could read human language. He wondered if it mattered. On the third day, the negotiations nearly collapsed. Queen Selithera accused humanity of bad faith. Ambassador Kim accused the Valarians of impossible demands. Voices were raised. Threats were made. Daniel watched it all from his corner, feeling helpless. During a break in the talks, he wandered into a part of the palace he had not seen before. The halls here were quieter. The guards were fewer. He was about to turn back when he heard something that stopped him cold. A child crying. He followed the sound to a small storage room at the end of a corridor. The door was slightly open. Inside, Princess Mirith sat on the floor between crates of supplies, her knees pulled to her chest, sobbing quietly. Daniel hesitated. Every rule told him to walk away. Touching a royal was punishable by death. Even being alone with the princess could be seen as a threat. He should leave immediately and tell no one what he saw. But she was just a little girl who was hurting. He sat down in the doorway, keeping his distance. He did not touch her. He did not even enter the room fully. "Hey," he said softly. "Are you okay?" She looked up sharply, fear flashing across her face. Then she recognized him. The human who waved. The human who took her flowers and left paper birds. "You should not be here," she whispered. Her voice was small and broken. "Neither should you," Daniel replied gently. "What happened?" She did not answer at first. She just looked at him with those big dark eyes, like she was trying to decide if he was real. "My mother," she finally said. "I went into the meeting. I wanted to see the humans." She was very angry. Daniel nodded. "Mothers get angry sometimes. It doesn't mean she doesn't love you? Love?" The princess tilted her head, like the word was strange to her. "What is love?" The question hit Daniel harder than any blow. This child, raised in a palace of crystal and light, did not know what love was. He thought about his sister, about his niece and nephew, about bedtime stories and warm hugs and the sound of laughter filling a small house on a quiet street in Ohio. Love is. He struggled to find words simple enough. Love is when someone matters to you more than anything. When you want them to be happy. When you hold them close and tell them everything will be okay. The princess listened with wide eyes. Do humans do this? All the time, Daniel said. It's kind of our thing. She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, will you hold me and tell me everything will be okay? Daniel's heart broke. He wanted to. God, he wanted to. But he knew what it would cost. I can't, he said, his voice thick. Your people have rules. If I touched you, they would hurt me. The princess nodded slowly, like she understood. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Then will you stay? She asked. Will you just stay and talk to me? Daniel smiled. Yeah, I can do that. He talked for an hour. He told her about Earth, about blue skies and green grass and oceans that went on forever. He told her about dogs that licked your face and cats that ignored you until they wanted food. He told her about rain and snow and the way the world smelled after a summer storm. She did not understand most of it, but she listened. And slowly her tears dried. Her breathing calmed. The pain in her eyes faded just a little. When a guard finally found them, Daniel knew his life was over. The soldier grabbed him roughly and dragged him away as the princess screamed for them to stop. But no one listened to children here. No one ever did. They threw Daniel into a cell deep beneath the palace. The walls were solid stone, cold and damp. A single light burned in the ceiling, too dim to read by, too bright to sleep under. There was no bed, no chair, just a floor and silence. Daniel sat against the wall and tried to stay calm. He had known the risks. He had chosen to stay with the princess anyway. Now he would face the consequences. Guards came after a few hours. They did not speak. They simply bound his hands and led him through dark corridors to a larger chamber where Commander Kithros waited. You were found alone with the princess, Kithros said. His voice was ice. You were speaking to her, attempting to influence her mind. I was comforting a crying child, Daniel replied. She's not a child. She is the heir to the Valarian throne. And you are a human invader who was discovered in a restricted area with our most precious treasure. Kithros stepped closer, his black eyes reflecting the torchlight. The punishment for this crime is death. Daniel felt fear, cold and real, settle in his stomach. But he kept his voice steady. I did not hurt her. I did not touch her. I only talked to her because she was sad and alone. Your intentions do not matter. Your actions are what condemn you. Kithros signaled to the guards. You will be executed at dawn tomorrow. The queen herself will witness your death. They dragged him back to his cell. Daniel spent the night staring at the ceiling. He thought about home, about the life he would never get to live, about the family he would never see again. His sister would get a message soon, formal words from the diplomatic corps expressing regret. She would cry. His niece would ask where Uncle Daniel went. He hoped someone would tell her he died, trying to help a little girl in another part of the palace. Ambassador Lara Kim was fighting a different battle. She stood before Queen Selithra in the throne room, her face pale but determined. The other members of the delegation stood behind her, silent and afraid. Your Majesty, Kim said, I understand that one of my people has violated your laws. I ask for mercy. Daniel Carter is young and foolish, but he meant no harm. Harm was done, the Queen replied. Your man was found with my daughter. In our culture, this is a crime beyond forgiveness. He did not touch her. He did not hurt her. He only spoke to her. Words can be weapons. Words can poison a young mind. The queen's eyes narrowed. Perhaps this was your plan all along. Perhaps you hoped to use my daughter against me. Kim shook her head. Your Majesty, that is not true. Daniel acted on his own. He saw a child in distress and responded as any human would. It was not a plot. It was not a strategy. It was simply kindness. The words seemed to confuse the queen. She tilted her head slightly, like she was hearing a language she did not fully understand. Kindness, she repeated. Your people speak of this often. You treat it as a virtue. We see it as a weakness. The universe is harsh. Only the strong survive. Kindness is a luxury that gets you killed. And yet here we are, Kim said quietly. Our species is young. We are small. We should have been destroyed 100 times over. But we survive. We grow. Perhaps our kindness is not as weak as you believe. The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke again, and her voice was harder than before. Your man will die tomorrow. This is not negotiable. However, I am willing to continue our peace talks despite this incident. You may remain and complete our discussions. Kim felt her heart crack. She looked back at her team. Everyone avoided her eyes. The choice is yours, Ambassador, the queen continued. Abandon your man and save your mission. Or defend him and watch everything fall apart. Daniel Carter or the future of humanity. One man or millions. Kim closed her eyes. She had trained her whole life for moments like this. She had always known that leadership meant making impossible choices. But knowing something and living it were very different things. We will continue the negotiations, she said finally. Her voice was hollow. We thank your Majesty for her understanding. She did not go to the cells to tell Daniel herself. She could not bear to look him in the eyes. She sent a message instead, formal and cold. Daniel read it in the dim light of his cell. We have been informed of your situation and the charges against you. After careful consideration, we believe the best course of action is to continue our diplomatic mission. We regret that we cannot intervene on your behalf at this time. Your sacrifice will be honored. He read it 3 times. Then he set it down and stared at the wall. He was not angry. He understood. The math was simple. His life against the lives of everyone on Earth. What was one junior diplomat compared to the survival of his entire species? He just wished it didn't hurt so much. That night, as he lay on the cold stone floor, he thought about the princess. He hoped she was okay. He hoped she did not blame herself. He hoped someday someone would show her what real love looked like. Maybe it would not be him. Maybe he was just the first step on a long journey. But at least she would remember. At least she would know that somewhere in the universe, there were people who cared about crying children, who told stories to lonely girls, who gave paper birds and received flowers in return. That had to mean something. And had to in her chambers high above. Princess Mirith pressed her face against her window and looked out at the stars. She held a small paper crane in her hands, the last gift Daniel had given her. She did not fully understand what was happening. She only knew that the kind human was in trouble because of her. Because he had been nice to her when no one else was, she wanted to help him. She wanted to do something. But she was just a child. Children had no power here. She folded herself into her bed and cried until she had no tears left. Then she lay in the darkness, holding the paper bird to her chest, and made a decision. Tomorrow, she would find a way. Tomorrow, she would be brave. She did not know what she would do yet. She only knew that she could not let the kind human die without at least trying to save him. He had given her something no one else ever had. She would give something back. Dawn came too quickly. Daniel was woken by guards who pulled him to his feet and bound his hands with chains of cold metal. They did not speak. They did not meet his eyes. They simply led him through winding corridors and up countless stairs, until they reached the great throne room. It was filled with people. Hundreds of Valerians stood in neat rows, their colorful skins shifting in patterns that Daniel could not read. Nobles, officials, military commanders. All of them had come to watch the human die. At the far end of the room, Queen Selithera sat on her throne of black crystal. She wore armor today instead of robes, as if she were going to war. Her face was stone. Her eyes were empty. The human delegation stood to one side. Ambassador Kim was there, her face pale and drawn. She looked at Daniel for a moment, then quickly looked away. The guilt in her eyes told him everything he needed to know. He did not blame her. He could not. Commander Kithros stood beside the throne, his hand resting on the hilt of his blade. Near the queen's feet, Princess Mirith sat on a small cushion. She was dressed in formal clothes, her face painted with ceremonial markings. She looked tiny and afraid. Their eyes met across the room. Daniel tried to smile at her. He wanted her to know that it was okay, that he did not regret what he had done. She did not smile back. Her hands were shaking. "Bring the prisoner forward," Queen Selithera commanded. The guards pushed Daniel through the crowd until he stood at the base of the throne. He looked up at the queen, this ancient ruler of 1,000 worlds, and felt strangely calm. Fear had burned away in the night. All that remained was a quiet acceptance. "Daniel Carter of Earth," the queen said, her voice filling the hall. "You stand accused of threatening the safety of the royal heir. You were found alone with Princess Mirith in a restricted area. You spoke to her without permission. You attempted to influence her thoughts with human ideas." "I spoke to a crying child," Daniel replied. His voice was steady. "That is all I did." A murmur ran through the crowd. Prisoners were not supposed to speak. They were not supposed to defend themselves. They were supposed to kneel and beg and accept their fate. "Silence," Kithros barked. "You will not address the queen unless commanded." But Selithera raised a hand. "Let him speak. I want to understand this human madness before I end it." Daniel took a breath. "Your Majesty, I know your laws. I know what I did was forbidden. But where I come from, we do not leave children alone when they are hurting. We comfort them. We hold them. We tell them that everything will be okay. That is not a crime on earth. It is simply what decent people do. And you believe your customs should override mine?" The queen's voice was sharp. "No. I only believe that kindness should matter more than politics. I was wrong. Apparently, kindness is a crime in your empire." He paused. "I am ready to die for that crime. But I am not sorry for what I did." The silence that followed was heavy and thick. No one moved. No one breathed. Then Queen Selithera nodded to the executioner. A Valarian warrior stepped forward, carrying a blade longer than Daniel's arm. The metal gleamed like captured starlight. The warrior took position beside Daniel and raised the weapon. Daniel closed his eyes. He thought of home, of his sister's laugh, of his niece's smile, of summer rain and autumn leaves and the way coffee smelled in the morning. He thought of a little princess who left flowers at his door and took paper birds in return. He hoped she would remember him. He hoped she would find happiness someday. The blade began its descent, and then a scream shattered the air. "Stop!" Daniel's eyes flew open. The executioner froze mid-swing. Princess Mirith had jumped from her cushion. She was running across the throne room, her small legs pumping, her ceremonial clothes flying behind her. Guards reached for her, but she was too fast. "No!" She screamed. "You cannot hurt him! You cannot!" Before anyone could stop her, she threw herself at Daniel. Her small arms wrapped around his waist. Her face pressed against his chest. She held him like he was the only solid. The thing in a world that was falling apart. The Palace went silent. Not just quiet, silent. Kind of silence that happens when the universe itself holds its breath. Every Valorian in the room had frozen. Nobles stared with open mouths. Guards dropped their weapons in shock. Even Commander Kithros seemed turned to stone. Queen Selithra arose slowly from her throne. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide. For the first time since Daniel had met her, she looked uncertain. "Mirith," she whispered, "what have you done?" The princess turned her head to look at her mother, but she did not let go of Daniel. Tears streamed down her face, leaving trails through the ceremonial paint. "He was kind to me," she said. Her voice was small but clear. "He talked to me when I was sad. He told me stories. He made me feel like I mattered." She held Daniel tighter. No one else ever did that. No one. Not the servants. Not the tutors. Not even you. The words hung in the air like knives. Daniel realized he was holding his breath. He did not know what was happening. He only knew that this moment felt bigger than anything he had ever experienced. "In our law," Commander Kithros said slowly, his voice strange, when a royal child embraces someone publicly, it is a declaration of absolute trust, an unbreakable bond. It has not happened in 4,000 years. "I know what it is," the queen snapped. But her voice shook. She descended from her throne and walked toward them, her steps slow and measured. The crowd parted before her like water around a stone. She stopped in front of Daniel and her daughter. For a long moment, she just stared at them. At the human in chains. At the child clinging to him like he was life itself. "You did this," she said to Daniel. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You made her feel this way." "I did nothing," Daniel replied. "I just treated her like a person. Like a child who deserved to be heard." He looked down at the princess, then back at the queen. "She was starving, Your Majesty. Not for food. For love. For someone to care about her." The queen flinched like she had been struck. "That is not our way," she said. But the words sounded hollow. "Maybe it should be," Daniel replied. Princess Mirith looked up at her mother. Her eyes were red and wet, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "He asked me what love was. I did not know. I am your daughter, and I did not know what love was." She swallowed hard. "Is that the legacy you want, Mother? Is that what our people should be proud of?" The queen stood very still. Something was cracking behind her eyes. Something ancient and cold was finally breaking. Around them, the palace remained silent. And in that silence, the future of two civilizations hung in the balance. Queen Selithra stood motionless for what felt like hours. The entire throne room waited in that terrible silence, watching their ruler face something she had never encountered before. A choice that no protocol or tradition could guide her through. "Everyone out," she finally said. Her voice was quiet but absolute. Now, the nobles and officials began to move, shuffling toward the exits with confused whispers. Commander Kithros started to follow, but the queen stopped him. "You stay. Remove the prisoner's chains." Kithros hesitated. "Your Majesty, the law clearly states, I am the law." She did not raise her voice, but something in her tone made even the veteran soldiers step back. "Remove them." The chains fell away. Daniel rubbed his wrists where the metal had cut into his skin. Princess Mirith still held on to him, her grip just as tight as before. Soon the room was empty, except for 4 people. The queen, the commander, the human, and the child who had just done the impossible. Selithra walked in a slow circle around them, her eyes never leaving her daughter. "Tell me what you did," she said to Daniel. "Tell me exactly what you said to her." "I told her about Earth," Daniel said. "About rain and oceans and dogs. About how humans hold each other when they are sad. I told her that she was not alone." that someone in the universe cared about her tears. Why? The question caught Daniel off guard. Why what? Why did you care? She's nothing to you. A child of an enemy empire. Her pain could not benefit your mission. Her happiness would not change your fate. The queen stopped pacing and faced him directly. So why did you risk your life to comfort her? Daniel thought about the question. He thought about all the reasons he could give. Political explanations. Strategic justifications. Anything that might make sense in her world of calculations and power dot. But in the end, he could only tell the truth. Because she was crying. Because she was alone. Because where I come from, that is enough. He looked down at the princess, then back at the queen. I do not understand your people, your majesty. I do not understand how you can look at a child's tears and see weakness instead of a call for help. But I know my own heart, and my heart could not walk away from her. Selithra was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, more uncertain. We were not always like this. Thousands of years ago, we loved openly. We held our children close. We celebrated warmth and connection. She paused. But the universe was cruel. Wars came. Betrayals. We learned that love could be used against us. That caring for others made us vulnerable. So you stopped caring, Daniel said. We protected ourselves. But even as she said it, she did not sound convinced. Princess Mirith finally released Daniel and turned to face her mother. Her small face was determined in a way that made her look much older than her years. The human asked me what love was, she said. I told him I did not know. I asked him to hold me when I was sad, and he said he could not because you would kill him. Her voice cracked. I am your daughter, your only child, and I have never once felt like you loved me. The queen flinched. Mirith, is it true? Do you love me? The princess's eyes were fierce. Not as an heir, not as a political tool, as your daughter, as the child you brought into this world. Do you love me? Selithra opened her mouth, but no words came out. She stood there, the most powerful being in 100 star systems. Completely speechless, Daniel watched the moment unfold. He understood what was happening. A child was asking a simple question, and an empress was discovering that she did not know the answer. Selithra's voice broke. It was the first sign of real emotion Daniel had seen from her. I was taught that love was dangerous. That attachment to any single person was a weakness that enemies could exploit. I raised you the same way because I thought it would make you strong. It did not make me strong, Mirith said. It made me lonely. It made me sad. Every night I go to sleep in my beautiful room and I wish someone would hold me and tell me that everything is okay. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Is that strength, Mother? Is that what our great empire creates? Children who cry alone in the dark. The throne room fell silent again. But this silence was different. It was the silence of something ancient finally crumbling. Queen Selithra looked at her daughter for a long time. Then, slowly, she did something that no Valarian ruler had done in 4,000 years. She knelt down until she was at eye level with her child. I'm sorry, she said. The words seemed to cost her everything. I thought I was protecting you. I see now that I was only hurting you. She reached out, her hand trembling, and gently touched her daughter's face. I do love you, Mirith. I have always loved you. I just forgot how to show it. The princess stared at her mother in shock. Then she collapsed into her arms, sobbing with a relief that seemed to come from somewhere. Very deep. Daniel watched them hold each other for the first time in what might have been years. And he felt his own eyes grow wet. Commander Kithros stood nearby, his face unreadable. But Daniel noticed that the soldier's hand had moved away from his weapon. Later, after the tears had dried and the queen had composed herself, The decisions began. The human cannot be executed, Silithra said. She was sitting on the steps of her throne now, her daughter beside her, their hands still intertwined. My daughter has declared a bond with him. To kill him now would be to destroy her. The nobility will not understand, Kithros warned. Then they will learn. The queen looked at Daniel. You have caused me more trouble in 3 days than most diplomats cause in 30 years. I should hate you for it. Do you? Daniel asked. She considered the question. No, I think you have given me something valuable. Something I had forgotten I was missing. She squeezed her daughter's hand. For that, I will not only spare your life. I will change the terms of our peace agreement. Ambassador Kim was summoned. She arrived looking terrified, her eyes darting between Daniel and the queen. Your man will not be executed, Silithra informed her. Furthermore, I am prepared to reduce our demands significantly. We will maintain peace. We will establish cultural exchange programs. We will learn from each other. Kim looked stunned. Your Majesty, Thank you. But may I ask why? The queen smiled. It was small and strange, like a muscle that had not been used in too long. Because a junior diplomat taught me that kindness is not weakness. And because my daughter deserves to grow up in a universe where people comfort crying children instead of leaving them alone. The treaties were signed that afternoon. The next morning, Daniel stood on the landing platform, ready to board the shuttle back to Earth. The human delegation was already on board. Only one goodbye remained. Princess Mirith ran across the platform and stopped in front of him. She was still small, still young, but there was something different in her eyes now. Something like hope. Thank you, she said. For the stories. For the paper birds. For everything. Daniel knelt down so he could look at her properly. Thank you for saving my life. You saved mine first. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal that glowed with soft inner light. This is from my homeworld. It is my most treasured thing. I want you to have it. Daniel took the crystal carefully. It was warm in his palm, like it contained a tiny star. Will you come back someday? Mirith asked. I promise, Daniel said. And he meant it. He boarded the shuttle and found his seat by the window. As the craft lifted off, he looked down at the palace one last time. Queen Silithra stood on a balcony, watching them leave. And beside her, holding her hand, was Princess Mirith. The child waved. Daniel waved back. And somewhere in the vast emptiness between stars, something new was beginning. Not because of weapons or threats or the strength of empires, but because one person had shown kindness to a crying child. The palace had gone silent that day, not from fear or shock, but because every Valarian present had witnessed something their culture had forgotten existed. A child simply wanting to be loved, and a stranger brave enough to answer. Perhaps that was humanity's greatest gift to the universe. Not technology or strength or cunning. Just the simple, stubborn belief that every crying child deserves to be held. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to change everything.